Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about my second manic episode, the events that led up to it, um, and just kind of what was going on with me at the time. So at the time I had left going to school up in Boston and come back home to New Jersey to start going to school there. I was having a lot of problems up in Boston. I felt like I had no family. I felt very alone. Um, and on top of these things, I had like a really bad other medical problem than BP that I couldn't get taken care of in Massachusetts because I didn't have health care in that state. So long story short, I came home. Um, I took a couple months off to recoup. Um, and then after I recouped, I started going to school at NJIT. Um, Needless to say, that semester was bad. It was like a complete wash. I started as a computer science major, and I think I failed almost every single one of my classes that semester. I was just not in the right headspace to be going to school there. Um, and yeah, no, the classes were really rough. I mean, I'm sure if I was like healthier at the time, I could have done well, but I wasn't, and I was under some pretty difficult circumstances. From what I remember, I was driving to school with my dad's car and then driving back to pick him up, and I wasn't really allowed to be on campus for too long because I had to be back home to pick up my dad from work. Um, and on top of that, I was like picking up my girlfriend from her job. So just like the combination of everything, I felt very stressed, felt very worn down. Um, and towards the end of the semester, it's like right when the episode started to hit. I remember like I just kind of started feeling a little weird, and I started feeling like I needed to write again. And for me, like I don't know how a lot of people experience mania, but like the big thing that happens for me is I feel the need to write all of a sudden. Um, so I started this blog, and I wrote a story called Behind Green Eyes, and the story was about a man who worked at the Port Authority as a security guard, and he would sit behind the cameras every day and watch like 19 rows of cameras, and he was like a very strange guy. He didn't really like interacting with people too much, and he has kind of a crush on one of the girls in Port Authority. And long story short, um, the guy imagines or like wills through his mind like her meeting up with him, and they run into each other on the stairs, and she like through tripping or something kisses him, and the next part of the story is like he blacks out and wakes up in a hospital bed, and he's like sees the same woman except she's like 10 years older and surrounded by children, and she's like freaked out that he finally woke up. And I can't remember much more of the story, but so I wrote this story. It's not a bad story in all honesty. It's probably one of my better ones. But then I wrote another story, and this is like as the mania starts ramping up, like I was sleeping less and less, starting to act really weird. So I wrote another story. This one was called Marvelous Mr. Black, and I need to like give you guys the surrounding events of this story. So this was right around when Trump started to go on TV as like an anti-Obama guy, even way before his presidential run. And I had a really bad feeling about Trump um, even before he announced his presidential run. I just got a weird vibe from him. Um, and seeing him on TV as kind of one of the forefront guys in the birther movement really startled me. So I wrote this story, Marvelous Mr. Black, about Trump's great-great-grandson in kind of a future New York where the entire of Manhattan, like the entirety of Manhattan, is owned by two families. The Wall family, like the Walmart family, and the same family that owns Walgreens, and the Blacks, which are like what Trump's family had to change their name to because something happened in the family. And Trump's great grandson, Mr. Black, I forget what his first name is. He's basically like this antichrist figure who just destroys everything he touches. Um, and the crux of the story is that after like a long day of like uh, ruling over his corporation and having sex with barely consenting people and stuff like that, he runs into a hobo on the street who kind of casually lets him know that, like, no matter how much wealth he procures, he's still gonna die. Um, and that he calls up his assistant the next day to say, like, oh, there was a homeless person in Midtown Manhattan, and his assistant laughs and says there hasn't been a homeless person in Manhattan in 20 years. So, like, it was like, as my health was going further down, I wasn't sleeping well or eating well, but something really strange happened to me towards the end of the episode. So, like, I started to get worse, and then I wrote this other story. I can't really find it, but this was, like, as the ruminations were getting, like, really bad. The name of the story was Painting in the Dark Room. And yeah, sorry this is so narrative heavy, but like the stories go along with the episode. So the crux of the story is like this girl who's a photographer, and she's obsessed with like capturing photos of people in desperate moments. And she meets this girl she really likes, and kind of ruins like a potential relationship by taking a picture of her as she's like falling off a cliff. Um, and like at this point the episode was almost in full swing. Like I was getting probably 3 hours of sleep a night. I was in a very, very rough spot, and I wrote one more story. I can't find it here, but the story was almost like a continuation of my Mr. Black story, and it was basically about this king who demanded, like, basically people sacrifice stuff to him, like his opulence. Um, and they would give him, food and things, and he would build his, like, tower out of all the things that people gave to him. But when they ran out of stuff to give him, he started demanding, like, human sacrifices, and so he built, like, this tall, tall tower. Um, and he sat on top of it as like this, gluttonous ruler. Um, and a girl like climbs to the top of the tower and kills him and kind of resets nature back to its previous state. That's all I remember about it. Um, I don't know if I can still find the story. It's somewhere online hidden. But after I wrote the story, I knew something was very, very wrong. Um, like the ruminations while I was writing were very intense, and I remember I was like lying down in the bath, and I was just like tripping. Like it's hard to explain, but like when you're manic, every little thing is like an explosion. Like every little sensation, everything you're dealing with, and not in like a fun way, in like a very uh painful, unfortunate way. Because a lot of people talk about mania as like the euphoric side of it, which I think is only like a small portion of mania, but the vast majority of mania is being like very unsettled, very easily upset by things, and your head just feels like a whirlwind. So I wrote this last story, and then I told my dad, that I wasn't doing well and I needed to check myself into like an inpatient or something. Um, so, um, I remember like they were driving me off to the hospital, and I had like plans for one more story. The story was going to be about like a young boy who was bullied at school, and he like had this plan to give everybody in the school like stuff for Valentine's Day to make him like them. But the kids at school joked that he had a bomb. So they called the bomb squad in, and they open the kid's locker, and it's all just like nice stuff for the kids. The kid commits suicide or something like that. I can't really remember the details of the story, but I get to the hospital, and uh, I'm sitting in the hospital bed, just reeling because the down part of mania, which is the part that most people get hospitalized in because it feels really bad, was just like fully going, and I felt like 100% just nuts. And I was like sitting there with my ex, and the weird part of this episode was there was a kid in the next hospital bed over who had gotten in an accident, and he told his father like he didn't drink, he didn't do drugs, but he saw like a man on the highway, and there was no man there, but the man that he described um, looked exactly the way I pictured Mr. Black. He was a man in a tuxedo. He was very tall. He had black hair and blue eyes, and I was like, that's my story. Um, and I remember having this like brief thought, like, were we did we see the same thing? I mean, um, I know that when you're manic, everything seems like this big grand conspiracy, but this was really like a moment of just like, um, why is there this strange occurrence? What's going on? And it was very odd. Um, and I remember being in the hospital and looking out the window, and I was so zonked out that the path that was outside the window looked like it was snaking around. And I remember calling it the River Styx. Um, and I remember having other thoughts while I was in the hospital. I remember having the thought that our perception of the universe was like flawed, and like the crux of the theory was that like everything on Earth mirrors the movement of like stars and celestial planets and stuff, and we just like haven't been able to observe it on a grand enough scale yet. And I wanted to share my theory, but I also wanted to get out of the mental hospital, so I just kind of kept quiet. And I was there for about a week. Um, I don't remember much of it because I was very manic. I remember that the staff was very nice to me because I didn't really bother anybody. Um, and they let me sleep alone because the guy in my bunk was like very strange. Um, I mean, mental hospitals are weird places. People who've never been to one, you don't really know. But being in a mental hospital, in a psych ward, not so much fun. It actually kind of sucks. And you only really go there when you need to just be away from society for a little bit. And it's not a great place to stay. It's like a place you go when you're out of options, just so somebody can keep tabs on you. And I remember I spent like a week there. And when I checked myself out, my ex at the time picked me up. Um, and it took 5 or 6 months before I started to really get better. And I didn't take any time off. I had that episode and I went right back to school. Um, so even though I was in like pretty dire straits, I went back to school. I switched majors. Um, and that's when I started to get on like the education track and do stuff from there. But yeah, it was a rough episode. A lot of writing. Um, if you're manic or the type of person who tends to be manic, um, or if you have BP or struggle with anything like that, just be aware of the things you do when you're in that elevated mood. Because if you know what your tendencies are, you can cut yourself off um, before it gets to the point where like it's out of control and you're going nuts. Because for me, I spent like 5 or 6 straight days just writing, not sleeping. I had a lot of cracked out conversations with people. And yeah, that was it was a rough episode. I was in a lot of stress at the time. Um, and I can't remember what year that was, but tomorrow I'm gonna talk about my last episode. And my last episode is a little different from the first two in the sense that I really think I was responsible for this one. And what I mean by responsible is like um, I saw the episode coming like even like 5 or 6 months ahead of time. And had I taken better care of myself, I probably would have been fine. So yeah. So I'm going to talk about my third episode and what I learned from it. But for now, that's pretty much it. At least for this second episode. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.